Hello, my name is Sebastian Markt. I'm the head of programming for Berlinale Generation, and today I have the pleasure of speaking to Sara Kern, the director of Moja Vesna, which is going to have its world premiere in the Generation K+ competition this year. Welcome, Sara.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. I thought we could start with watching a clip from your film and then talk about it.
Sure, okay.
This is the beginning of your film, your debut feature, and it introduces us to the main characters of the film. Can you tell us something about who they are and what their relationship is?
The main character in this film is Moja. She's a 10-year-old girl, and she's just lost her mother before the film starts. So she's kind of trying to, just hold herself together and kind of push through. And then her sister Vesna, who is 10 years older, so she's 20, and she's also pregnant. And then they've also got a father who is there, but sort of not there, sort of in the background. But yeah, the two sisters are very different, and they're both trying to really come to terms with this, with what happened, and to kind of figure out how to go forward when there's pain that is kind of seems unbearable. So they've got very different approaches to that. Like Moja just kind of tries to make everything good and like pretend that all is good and not feel much. But Vesna then comes in with the older sister comes in with this very different energy. She's like the disruptor in this family, sort of. She's always kind of pointing to the truth and trying to resolve something, figure something out. She's a creative person as well, so she does that through her poetry slams, and it's like she feels everything instead of the others in the family. Maybe she kind of pushes Moja to feel things in the end, even though it's not it's not very pleasant always for the little sister, the way Vesna kind of pushes her. But in a way, I think because they're so different, they kind of help each other grieve in a way.
There were no words spoken in that scene, and at the same time, we immediately get a sense of some form of relationship, and I think it's something that in a way stands a bit for your stylistic approach in the film altogether, as it's a story that in some sense revolves around trying to find words or dealing with something that the characters are trying to come to terms with, but not necessarily have the language for yet. Do you want to say something about how you approached telling this particular story in stylistic terms?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm drawn to you know, I wouldn't say that I'm drawn to the like unspeakable or something that you can't quite say or comprehend even, but it's definitely something that has kind of been driving me. You know, I think it's even in my short films, like I've done a lot of, you know, it's always been kind of a child who is focusing on the adults around him or her and trying to kind of understand what's going on. But of course, child often cannot really understand what is going on with the adults. You know, one can imagine things and stuff, but yeah, there's often when there's problems in the family with communicating, you know, when the adults are not able to kind of really communicate things, then that impacts the kids as well. And I don't know, I guess it comes from this personal experience of my own childhood that, you know, I'm trying to, yeah, to kind of come closer to this kind of thing that is the most alive, you know, what really drives me. So, and sometimes by not using words or by just having characters on screen that, yeah, that are not saying anything, it kind of opens something up, you know. I find that words are very important, of course, but they are limiting in a way. So I think, yeah, I'm interested in exploring what you know, what sort of opens up when you put images together of characters just expressing something with just their faces or body postures or yeah, I think it's almost like, you know, it's almost like in poetry where you have this, you know, things kind of, the most important things kind of happen between the lines. It's of course the words are important, but what's left out is kind of really opens something up in the viewer or the reader. So it's not so much a conscious approach. I'm just drawn to that. And usually, you know, in the script, there was much more dialogue. And then it was a really interesting process of paring it back and just kind of removing lines, even in the edits. Yeah, I just am really interested in that, you know, how things sometimes become more powerful when you take some sentences out, you know, and you leave the silence to kind of to just be. And yeah, it makes things more loose, I guess. So it's a fine line between it being too loose then. But yeah, this is I'm really drawn to exploring this sort of less is more approach with words, that's for sure.
I think you mentioned before that maybe we could say the film is set in Australia within a family that emigrated from Slovenia. And without the film being autobiographical in any narrow sense, I think you mentioned that you also draw on some personal experiences in that regard.
Yeah, I drew on my experiences of being a migrant to Australia, and I moved later in life, not as a child, but it definitely gave me an interesting perspective, I think, on, you know, it's kind of interesting watching your old country from afar, especially from that far away. Australia is really quite different to Slovenia, but it's a very interesting place because there's a lot of migrants there, and so there's a lot of people who have got, you know, family far away, and that kind of creates something, you know, it's almost like you can feel it in the air. But also, I think setting this story, you know, kind of, trying to tell a story about a family who's trying to grieve, basically, and doing that in a so-called foreign country for them, it's kind of, it does something, you know, it changes things when you're trying to go to deal with some complex emotions or states like grief in a country that is not quite your own, where you haven't got the maybe as many connections or family, or you don't even know the land as much. And so it's interesting. I think in some ways being far away from the land that you know can allow you to feel more, but in a different way it can also be more isolating. So I think that affects the family in the film as well. They're already kind of closing in a little bit because of this tragedy that's happened, but this is then exacerbated, I think, by the fact that they're also on their own, like a little unit in a foreign land, and the father doesn't know the language that well, and he can communicate, but it's not, he's sort of, it seems like he's from nowhere. He's sort of drifting. So that's it. I think it's then a challenge for Moja, and a hope for Moja that she'll be able to kind of reach out anyway, and to not stay closed in this family, but to kind of forge connections with the outside world, and maybe find some of the things that couldn't be found in the family outside. And I think she starts to do that through the film. She makes a friend, and that opens something up for her.
Something that also that I found very remarkable about the film is that in this this complex emotional web that you already described, there's also a lot of humor. The film is at times very funny. Do you want to say something about your relationship to humor in that sense, both as a director and working with the actors to create that kind of fine humor, and also just since it's a film that deals with coming to terms with something traumatic as a way of dealing with the challenges that lie in front of us?
Yeah, humor is a funny one. I never kind of think about it much. I certainly didn't. Yeah, I didn't set out to make it kind of happened organically, I guess. I think when you're trying to depict something sad, I mean, it is a sad subject, but it's almost like you can't see it properly if there's not some light to it as well, and some, I didn't try to make like really funny moments, but it just kind of happened, I guess, with this friend that comes into Moja's life, and she's very different from her, and I don't know, this is always, in my childhood as well, like I was this serious kid who was always kind of tense and worried and kind of holding things together and trying to, I wasn't able to just relax and kind of play around and stuff. But then I always had some friend who was just completely my complete opposite. So, just some hilarious, they were just gonna, or that's how I saw them anyway. And I guess I this comes from this early experience of kind of adoring this friend, and I think, but I think it kind of comes naturally when one is telling a story about something, even if it's personal, but if it's kind of, if it's been worked through enough, or if it's kind of removed enough from, if it's not in some raw state, then, like, I guess if you're trying to tell a story about something that is really raw still in you, then you can't find any humor anywhere, that's then becomes kind of overbearing. But yeah, I think it's necessary to have some fun as well, because otherwise, otherwise if there's too much just sadness, then you just switch off and you're not able to really feel as much. Whereas if there's a bit of contrast, then you can sometimes feel more. Then you can start crying at the funny scene maybe, or I don't know. But it sort of happened. It wasn't we weren't trying to make a comedy, and it's not a comedy.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to do this, and I'm very much looking forward to being able to experience all those emotions that your film carries with audiences soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.